last season in 2024-25, we saw the top six lead the way for the St. Louis Blues, bringing them to their first playoff appearance in 3 years. Robert Thomas, of course, had a fantastic year. That second line of Dylan Holloway, Brayden Schenn, and Jordan Kyrou was one of the most effective two-way lines in the entire NHL. That's something we've talked a lot about. So with those key players in the top six sticking around and young players like Jimmy Snuggerud entering the picture now, how does the Blues' top six compare with the league's contenders, and how effective can they be in 2025-26? Are they ready to compete for a Stanley Cup with this top six forward group, or are they still missing a little bit? We'll talk about all that and more today on Note News. Welcome into another episode of Note News. We're a St. Louis Blues podcast, and we go live twice a week. Schedule has been a little bit different lately. Just some life stuff going on. So we will, continue to provide content as best as we can throughout some changes and stuff like that. But glad to be back here with Alec to talk hockey. It's John and Alec with you as always, talking Blues hockey. And right now it's off season. We're looking ahead to 2025-26. Just trying to think about how good this Blues team can be. Can they get back to the playoffs? Can they go a little bit further this time? We're talking about all that stuff for much of the summer. And we know that in the hockey world, this is the time of year where it's difficult to find a lot of content to engage with, and people are itching to see hockey again, us included. And so we're doing our best to bring you all, the Blues fans, some of that content pretty frequently. So we'd love to have you. We really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that button if you haven't. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen on Spotify and Apple. That really does help us out. And then follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, @NoteNewsPod. Post a lot of other great stuff over there. But Alec, the turtle that is the off season, or the snail that is the off season, is inching ever forward. How you holding up? And how you been?
Doing pretty good. I'm ready to. I honestly, I really appreciate these episodes giving us a chance to talk hockey,
Yeah.
to be like some form of reprieve in this mind-numbingly slow off season. It's always nice to hop on Note News and chat it up with you and just talk, Blues State of the Union. And thanks everyone for tuning in live. Welcome to the Gretzky episode, the
Number
great
99.
one they are calling it.
Yeah.
But Blues legend, of course.
Legendary.
But
Yeah.
yeah, let's break down some current Blues players.
Yeah, let's do it. So we're talking top six today specifically. There are obviously some forwards that we probably won't devote as much time to discussing today that will make their way into the top six, but I think we're going to try to nail down a top six that will guide most of our discussion. And we're trying to figure out where the Blues top six forwards, where they rank league wide, how they compare to mostly other playoff teams and contenders, is what we'll discuss today. And this is pretty much completely inspired by an article that you wrote, Alec, recently for Bleeding Blue. So I just want to give you a chance to plug that article. So what was the thought process behind that article? And what are your overall thoughts on this top six?
Sure. So the article was basically, let's see, I don't have the headline pulled up, but
I've got it
it
here if you want me to
was
read it.
okay. Sure, yeah.
The headline right here. You ready? The St. Louis Blues have a top six that is ready to compete for a Stanley Cup. That might be a bit of a spoiler for one of the questions we'll discuss later on, but that's the title.
Oof, just some really enthralling stuff. Whoever wrote that must be really good at their volunteer work. But
Right.
um, I basically was thinking about the strengths of the Blues and how they can win and the ways that they can win consistently. And the way that you have to win in the NHL is with, a mixture of depth and top end talent. But really, it's your top end talent that's going to carry you the distance and take you to where you want to go, eventually getting to the promised land. And the top end, the top six, I should say, is going to be the strength of this team. It has to be the strength of this team, and it really should be with two very, very solid lines that we'll sort of break down here in a second. Um, that can be offensively dangerous and defensively capable. Um, the the top six, sort of the machine of the Blues this season is going to go as the top six goes, and a lot of that is going to be obviously on Robert Thomas. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Um, Basically, my inspiration for writing this was just thinking about how can the Blues push themselves ahead of other contenders in the NHL. And the way that I think they can do that is that if they're top six, if you just compare them roster to roster, on paper to on paper, it's not obviously how it's going to play out. But if you compare it, how does it look at against some of the best teams like a Carolina, like a Vegas, who might have that upper echelon talent like Mitch Marner that the Blues don't necessarily have. But when you compare all six pieces on the roster, can it be more complementary and can it be a much closer argument? I think the answer is what you will find if you tune in today.
I
Gotcha.
like it. Yeah, so definitely go read Alex's piece over on Bleeding Blue if you haven't already. And um, Alec writes a lot of great articles. I was looking through some of them today and reading the titles to them, not reading who wrote them, but all the ones where I was like, that looks like an interesting topic. I wanna look into that. Every time I was like, written by Alec. Wow, look at him go. So do some good stuff over there. So, excuse me. I want to start out this discussion by nailing down who we think the top six will be. Obviously, there are some other forwards that could work their way in, as performance requires it or as injury requires it. Um, so, I mean, do you think it's set in stone first of all, or written in pen, this top six, or do you think any changes will be made before the start of the season? And to start out with, let me just make sure that we're on the same page of what this top six actually is. Top line, and let us know in the chat if you have any other thoughts on this lineup construction, these line combinations. Top line, we're thinking obviously Robert Thomas is going to center that one. Who will his wingers be? Is a bit of an interesting discussion. I see someone, Jacob, in the chat saying Booch and Neighbors to start the year. I personally think we'll definitely see Buchnevich on the top line. I think the real question mark is who's on the other side, and I think the question really is it Jake Neighbors or is it Jimmy Snuggerud? Is Jimmy Snuggerud ready to be that guy? Ready to be that I don't know if star is the right word, but exciting young player that is talented enough to go ahead and sort of earn his keep on the top line? I personally think yes. I think what he showed at the end of last season and in the playoffs is enough evidence, enough of an indication that he's ready. I would put him up, excuse me, up there on the top line. But I think Jacob makes a good point in the chat that Jake Neighbors, he has the experience up there. He is pretty much. I mean, we're kind of thinking of him as a perennial 25-ish goal scorer, at least 20 plus goal scorer from here on out for a little while. That's sort of his role that he'll play. So he can park it in front of the net and sort of rake in the goals, I guess. So Neighbors has a case as well. I personally think Snuggerud on the top line. And then second line, it's a little bit more simple. I think the success of Holloway, Schenn, Kyrou is nothing to mess with. I think Monty rolls that back out again. There is a question mark around, does recently acquired Pius Suter work his way in as the 2C, or do they stick with Schenn? Do they move Schenn down to the 3C or to a winger role? Colin asked in the chat, Schenn as a winger up on the top line. So there are some interesting permutations here. Personally, I think Snuggerud, Thomas, Buchnevich on the top line, Holloway, Schenn, Kyrou on the second. Alec, do you concur?
I think I do, and I think it's not. I don't know if that's necessarily what it might be. I haven't really thought about it just because it seems kind of set what I would do personally, but it seems like what the team wants to do is Booch Thomas Snuggerud. And I mean, power to them. I don't see a reason against that. You know, I can see reasons for other players, but that doesn't mean to take away from what Snuggerud can be. I think everyone agrees Buchnevich should be with Thomas for sure. Um, and it seems like the indications from the team are that it'll be Butch Thomas Snuggerud. So that's why I'm sort of sticking with that. But I think Shen on the wing is a super fun, super fascinating idea. I'd like to see Neighbors up there, but it seems like Neighbors doesn't really have a lot of good permutations, just whatever he was playing with. Like he couldn't really figure it out with Shen, and even when he was playing with Thomas, it wasn't quite the same. Thomas's playmaking is a little bit more cerebral. Not to say that Neighbors isn't a smart player, but yeah, I kind of think that it will be um, Booch Thomas Snug, and that seems to be all indications are pointing to that. And I see no reason for them to do otherwise. I guess it'd be the other reason is like I can't really give a reason against that permutation. I think that would be very successful and very fun to watch too. So
Nice. Yeah. Um, and I just feel like Neighbors really belongs on the third line in my mind. Like, and that's we talked about it I think recently on our forwards preview episode. Like in the modern NHL, your third line has to be able to score goals. Like it that's just the reality now. And so I think it's really good to have a guy like Neighbors down there on the third line that can put up 20, 25, 27 goals. You need some goal scoring down there. He's got the grit to play those tough minutes. So um, I think I personally like that a little better. So um, are there any other questions that you want to address with the top six? I mean, do you think Snuggerud is ready for the top line? I mean, a big question mark is can Buchnevich bounce back, be the Buchnevich of a few years ago? Can Robert Thomas reach another level? Can he get to 100 points? I mean, those are some question marks around the top line. Do you have any questions or concerns with the top line before we talk about the second one as well?
not a concern. I think this is more of a discussion of both lines in tandem together. Um, Something that I like to think about and sort of toy with quite often. So this is more getting into what would be best for the top line and maybe not the construction of both lines. That Holloway Shen Kyrou line worked so well last season, and it was so successful. It was one of the best lines in the NHL, like we talked about. Will they run back and have the same success? That's where I don't necessarily have the same level of confidence that I would definitely start with Booch Thomas Snuggerud, Holloway Shen Kyrou. But if 10 games in, things aren't going quite as well for Holloway Shen Kyrou as we're used to, I might actually look to switch. And this might be kind of a hot take. I might actually look to switch Buchnevich and Kyrou because Thomas and Kyrou have very, very clear chemistry together. And maybe even you just swap the wingers altogether and keep that Kyrou and Holloway chemistry because a Kyrou Holloway Thomas line, well, Thomas and Kyrou have chemistry together as one of the best passers in the league. I think the best passer in the league, and his matching contract guy who he's played with for a lot of the time on the same line for several years now. And then Holloway and Kyrou, we saw develop a lot of chemistry last season as very complementary skill sets, as very similar kinds of players, where their speed and intensity kind of take defenders away from the other player and they sort of enable each other. I think that to me, like mixing it up would be really, really fun. And I think Buchnevich is kind of a guy who might benefit from Shen's physical play too, as a guy who can sort of pick up if Shen is blowing up an opposing skater. Buchnevich can then pick up the puck, and he's a pretty decent puck carrier. And if he can find some clean ice, and then he's got Snuggerud to be a playmaker on top of that. If you want Snuggerud to be more the puck carrier and Buchnevich to be just a sniper, I think there's actually a lot more permutations than we're allowing here. And so I think I would be looking within the first few games of the season. If a mix-up has to happen, I have all the faith in the world in Jim Montgomery to push the right buttons, and I think that there could be a chance to, I don't know, make it really fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree for sure. Um, so it sounds like we sort of are on the same page as far as the actual construction of these top two lines. Um, and Alec, in your article, you sort of made the point that um, that this top six, right? Um, they really led the way for the Blues in 2024, 25. And especially down the stretch post Four Nations, they sort of kicked it into a different gear. We're one of the hottest teams in the entire league, and by the season's end, the Blues as a team had the 13th most goals scored in the league. Obviously, they were in the playoffs. But in your article, you sort of make the point that you think the 13th best offense by goal scoring might be more of a floor than sort of like um, than a ceiling or even sort of like a middle of the pack type of outcome. So I want to sort of have this discussion now. Do you think like how? I mean, I guess the question is, you see this as their floor. How high do you see? Like, do you see this offense flying with this top six? Yeah, like if this isn't the middle of the pack or their ceiling, what is sort of my question. Like, what kind of performance and what rank in the NHL do you see as what this top six is really capable of?
Within the NHL, I mean, there's a lot of top end talent, but if you want to talk about consistent depth in the top six, which is sort of the point I made in my article, that's where I think the Blues can win. So, sort of what
Mm,
I was saying earlier was what could be the best top line. If we're taking a more broad discussion as to what could be the best top six, I think the Blues have a lot better odds of being a beyond just top half, like top third. I would say top third is like the floor of what they could be in the league. Um, just given how many like ways they can mix and match talent on the top six, the both forward lines, and how many different ways that they can win with the different types of complementary skill sets they have. You know, the passing of Thomas and Snuggerud, the scoring of Holloway and Kyrou, and then the physicality of Schenn and this and Buchnevich's shooting ability as well. Like there's a lot of different complementary skill sets here that I think top third is like, in my opinion, I think is like a floor of what they could achieve with this unit.
mm, nice. Yeah, I think it's really exciting, and I think you sort of pencil in some development of a Jimmy Snuggerud, of a Dylan Holloway. You know, maybe there's one final step or level that Thomas and Kyrou can reach to sort of unlock that true potential. Um, or maybe, and this is a question that we'll ask towards the end of the episode, maybe they make another addition. Maybe there's something, some other key piece that could work its way in. But I like your point about the depth and sort of this solid foundation um, of offense in this top six, and beyond just offense. I think this top six is fantastic when it comes to two way play. That's we talked about how elite the Holloway Schenn Kyrou line was. I think that is carried by their defense. Personally, they were really great offensively, but I think they were where they were actually elite was defensively. Um, so I mean, and the top line as well. Robert Thomas is like is a Selke finalist level defender, or could be, right. And then you've got Buchnevich, who historically has been more of that defensive winger. We didn't see so much of that last year, so you'd really like for him to get back to that. Um, and Snuggerud, for the most part, at the NHL level at least, is mostly unproven when it comes to defensive play. But for the most part, I think this top six, yes, the offense is there. Um, there is some talent there. There is a lot of potential there. But defense as well. I really like what I'm seeing from this group.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's another like strength of this team that is so undervalued around the NHL is that they have one of the best defensive forward cores in the league. And that just raises the floor of this unit, how good it can be, how the heights that they could achieve. If you have a floor of being a very solid to good defense as like as a baseline of play, let alone if there are advancements or you can repeat what you did last season, that only raises the floor. And that's why I sort of put this as a top third unit, because I think that there's such a solid foundation of floor of ways that they can win, of types of game scripts that they can play in and compete, of different types of players that they have, and then just the solid baseline of even if they're slumping offensively, they're still not going to give up a ton of goals, and that's always a positive thing.
Yeah, for sure. And to the Blues' credit, I think their depth extends beyond that too. And this isn't an episode where we really dive into the whole forward core, but like there are other names in there that like Pia Suter, Jake Neighbors that can work their way in that I think in a lot of ways sort of keep that two-way identity alive. So
For
yeah,
sure.
really exciting top six. I want to pivot now if you're ready to sort of comparing this top six with the league's contenders. And I think for now we're just going to have this discussion with regards to the teams that made the playoffs last year. Maybe there's an argument to be made for some teams that missed out for the top six that they have, but um, I think it's just easier. It opens the door to too many teams. I think if we go beyond that. So why don't we just stick to playoff teams from 24-25 and sort of compare what the Blues have with some of these other elite teams. I don't think we can make the argument personally that the Blues have an elite level top six. I look at teams like obviously the Florida Panthers, right? Their top six is insane. Top line, and just for listeners and viewers, we are using projected line combinations from Daily Faceoff, 425, 26. So I know we're talking about players that are teams that just made the playoffs, but we're looking at line combinations that are projected for next season because we're doing the same thing with the Blues. But anyway, so according to Daily Faceoff, they're projecting that the Panthers top six is going to be Verhaeghe, Barkov, Reinhart, Evan Rodriguez, Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk. It's kind of unfair, but that's
It is unfair.
an amazing top six. My mind also goes to Vegas and the top six that they've got: Dorofeev,
Mhm.
Eichel, Marner on the top, Barbashev, Hurdle, and Stone on the second line. I mean, that's unreal. You think of Edmonton too. I don't love what they've got in their top six besides their centers, and their centers alone make that top six elite. Um,
Right.
so there's only so much you can do if you're the Blues to compete with a combo of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Um, I think of the Dallas Stars as well: Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz, Mikko Rantanen, Duchesne, Johnston, and Sagan on that second line. So there's some talent there. Anyone else stand out to you? I mean, Winnipeg is pretty deep. Colorado, I think Carolina has a really solid forward core. Tampa Bay, Montreal, I think has a sleeper dark horse type of case for an elite level top six, but that would require some big steps from a lot of young guys. But do you think I'm sort of missing out on anyone, or do you think I'm giving too much credit to any of those teams when I talk about like the best top six that the league has to offer?
No, I think that's those four are kind of the big four in my mind. I mean, I really like you said, Carolina. Having McKinnon always helps, but I would argue that depth wise, they're lacking a little bit. But having like a perennial 100-point player versus Thomas, who has 100-point ability,
Mm-hmm.
just has to go out and do it, I think is kind of a different level for sure. Um, and the other name I'm thinking of is, let's see, I said Carolina. Um, oh, Tampa Bay also has a
Mm-hmm.
really good
Yeah.
top six that might be in the elite of the elite tier,
Yeah.
depending on how you view guys like Hagel and Point. But Yeah, I think those all check out for me.
Yeah, for sure. And do you agree with my assessment that the Blues don't really compete with those guys, or um, do you see an argument? Maybe not for this season, but do you see an argument for the Blues maybe getting there at some point? Like I I personally don't think they compare really well with a lot of these teams. But before we move on to maybe some of the teams that they do compare with, like I don't know, how do the Blues line up with these elite level teams to you?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I think how I view this level is like you really have to have like those just special players for it to be even close of a conversation. And Robert Thomas is getting there, but still has to have a season like that. And even then, he's just one guy. Kyrou and Holloway are wonderful supplementary pieces, but I don't think they're on the level of like Matthew Kachuk, who's a second liner for Florida. Um,
Crazy.
so I think I am uh sorry. I think to say can they, the way you worded your question, to say can they compete with these top sixes, I think they can compete with them in terms of they can play and hang against the best in the league. They have the ability and the defense to do so. But sometimes Connor McDavid is going to get his. Leon Draisaitl is going to get his. There's
Yeah,
just some players who are at that level that is just special. And so I think if you want to talk about how can the Blues get to that level of top six, that would take another piece to me.
sure.
And I think that's where something that fans have been calling for a while now, an addition of the caliber of a Matthew Kachuk, or
Hmm.
some supplementary winger, or even second line center. That's how you could see the top six rise to the elite level. But I think it is safe to say that they're just in the tier below that at least.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, they just don't seem to have like the game breakers that a lot of these top lineups do.
And there's
Jacob in
only
the
like 10 of those in the league. So
Right, yeah, and Jacob in the chat says that they lack the same physicality that a lot of contenders have. Um, I can see that. I think the second line with Holloway and Schenn, there's a lot of physicality there, but um, in the entire top six, yeah, like um, there are some teams out there that definitely get a little more physical than this top six. So who do you see sort of okay? So just of the teams that made the playoffs last year, before we talk about like who the Blues sort of who their peers are, who do you see as them? Who do you see them as like? Who do you see as the Blues are just like without a doubt better than this team. My mind goes to maybe Ottawa. I know they've got like Brady Kachuk and Tim Stutzla, um, but beyond that,
Ottawa's in
like
a big developmental year. So
sure,
in terms of Ottawa last season, yes, Ottawa does have a lot to prove this season.
yeah,
So it's kind of a interesting one there.
yeah. Minnesota, like I can see an argument, a big an argument in a big way for and against this top six. I mean, you've got Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Zuccarello on the top. You got Boldy, Rossi, and maybe Tarasenko on that second line. Crazy. Um, but of playoff teams, like who do you see as definitely worse than what the Blues have? Ottawa, LA, New Jersey, Minnesota.
LA for sure. LA is a team carried by their defense. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Fiala's great. They really needed an addition like a Marner to push them over. But I honestly like, I kind of will make the argument against Minnesota. I think they're a team lacking in depth pretty heavily. Obviously, Kirill Kaprizov is one of the, whatever you want to call it, 10, 15 best players in the entire league. Joel Eriksson Ek is one of the best defensive forwards in the league, maybe the best defensive forward in the league, or at least is up there with Barkov, like in that caliber for sure. But um, last season, hang on, last season put up 29 points in 46 games. That's not an excellent pace. That's like 50, 60 points. That's a Brayden Schenn as your top line center. Um, and then Zuccarello is getting up there in age too. He is, where is it? He's 37 and on the last year of his deal. So they've got some serious depth issues and some questions. Zuccarello had 54 points in 69 games, but is he going to be able to play the full season? And is he going to be able to play at the same level he has been at age 37? And then, yeah, like you said, they've got Vladimir Tarasenko in their top six. They're going to be like the third team in 3 years to find out that Vladimir Tarasenko is no longer a top six player. And I mean, Boldy's really good. Rossi's really good. Like they have really good players, but am I taking them over the Blues? I don't think so. I think that there is a lot more options on the Blues top six. Like on the Blues top six, top to bottom, there isn't. If Pavel Buchnevich and Brayden Schenn are your worst players and they're like 60 plus point players, that's pretty good if we're being objective about it. I know Blues fans have gripes, and rightfully so, have gripes with their play as of last season's. But if your worst players are like 50, 60 points perennially, that's really good. Um, and versus guys who are like scraping by to get to that level, I don't know. I'm taking the Blues over Minnesota for sure.
I think that's fair. And just looking at like of offensive lines with at least 200 minutes played together, both by the actual statistics like goals percentage as well as the more advanced analytics like expected goals percentage or I guess under the hood type stuff. Um, the Wild like they don't really rank, they don't really have any lines ranking very well relative to some of these top teams. So yeah, I think that's a
Kaprizov
fair
has
argument.
sneakily been an injury guy too. Something to watch
Yeah,
for.
something to watch for. Like when he's on, he can be one of the top players overall in the league. I mean, he was like
For
leading
sure.
the heart conversation for the first little bit there. Um, LA, yeah, I mean, like they've got Quentin Byfield is sort of coming into his own, but I can see an argument like you said for the Blues being better than them, um, and then yeah, I mean, I think Ottawa. I mean, so we're sort of running out of teams here. So who do you see as the Blues peers? Like which group of teams do you see them as sort of comparing best with? I mean, the teams we haven't really talked about a lot are Winnipeg, Washington, Toronto. I mean, we talked about Colorado, Carolina, New Jersey, Montreal. Like these are some of the other teams that we have not discussed yet, and there are some others as well that um, you could see being solid. Maybe they had a down year, like I don't know, New York Rangers. They're a weird team. They've got a lot of talent up there, but Vancouver, Utah, Columbus, like there are some other teams out there with that have some solid forwards. But really, my question is, who do you think is the peer group for the Blues when it comes to their top six?
Uh, I really want to say this team. I'm going to make a case for this team. I think a lot of people would put them ahead of the Blues, but I think there is at least a case to be had.
All right.
I really really like how they're built. It's your Carolina Hurricanes. I think that
Mm,
there's a very similar style. If Jackson Blake is the young kid, also one of the Hart or not Hart, Jesus, one of the uh, Calder potentials.
mm-hmm.
If Andrei Smechnikov is your established, is he also Russian winger? Then you've
Mm-hmm.
got Ehlers to produce kind of like Kyrou and Holloway to be the defensive, it doesn't play center, but to be the defensive young piece who's only ascending throughout the league. And then Taylor Hall and Brayden Schenn, yeah, I mean, they'll tell you that they're similar players. Just look at what happened on New Year's. But I honestly think Carolina, and to be compared to a team like Carolina, who is a perennial playoff threat in the Eastern Conference, which is different than in the Western Conference, obviously, but who is a very, very good team, is one of the longest active playoff streaks in the league, and that's who I think the Blues are compared to. I think that's pretty exciting.
I don't hate that comparison. I mean, just like Aho Thomas, like Aho's probably a little bit better than Robert Thomas. At least has a better track record than Robert Thomas up to this point.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely see those guys as comparable in terms of like actual production and not just like raw talent. I see Ehlers and Buchnevich as sort of being um, kind of similar, and then yeah, I like the comparisons you made up and down. I mean, like Jarvis Holloway seems like a solid comp in my mind, just solid two-way guys with some speed. Um, I don't hate that at all. And for some similar reasons, I actually see Montreal as a peer for the Blues. Um, I look at what they've got. I mean, like there's more maybe more upside here, but in terms of like what you're gonna get in the next couple of years, I think there are some similarities. I mean, Suzuki as that top line center, I think for better or for worse, it feels like Suzuki and Thomas are often compared. Um,
Yes, they are.
which is interesting. I mean, they've got one young man by the name of Zach Bolduc who could be an interesting factor in the top six. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's some talent there. Um, let's see what people are saying in the chat. Um, Colin says that New Jersey might be a peer. Yeah, I mean they've got maybe a better player than the Blues have in Jack Hughes, but like beyond that, like Nico Hischier, Timo Meyer, Jesper Bratt, like those are some of the names up there. In terms of actual production, looking at goals percentage, expected goals percentage, uh, a lot of lines in New Jersey finished the season with some similar numbers as the Blues top six. So yeah, like I think these are some interesting ones. I don't know, like I know that this team finished a lot better than the Blues did last season, but like I think they overachieved a little bit. The Washington Capitals, um, you've got Ovechkin on the Caps, right? But guess what the Blues have? They got Jimmy Snuggerud, who can set up, like, can set up his office in the face-off circle and rip his one timer. Yeah, so those are I really like the Carolina comp mostly just because I like the Canes, and I think the style of hockey being played for these two is pretty different. Um, but in terms of the talent on these lines, I think it's really interesting. Um, anyone else that you wanna discuss? I mean, like Utah is an interesting one. I think it's probably the most interesting to me. Maybe Vancouver. I don't know. Who else comes to
I
mind?
think I think the Montreal comp is really interesting because yeah, they do have a lot of like very promising talent that is a lot of very very high draft picks is the thing with Montreal because they were just
Hmm.
so bad for so long. So I guess you could say the Blues have been more successful in the draft and development part of that. But yeah, I mean Suzuki and Thomas, Caulfield and Kyrou, Demidov and Snuggerud are going to be battling it out for the Calder, not the Hart, although that would be fun if they were also battling it out for the Hart. It's interesting to see if they will have Bolduc playing in the top six or if he's going to be a if Line is going to take his spot because they
Yeah.
really did like they used him Line a lot last year. Um, so that'll be interesting to monitor. And but yeah, I would say the Blues have more proven talent than the Habs, but the Habs maybe have more upside long term. However, I still like if you're still asking me to take one team versus the other next season, it's going to be the Blues every time. While I think Suzuki and Caulfield are a great duo, I think their development has plateaued a little bit versus Thomas and Kyrou are still just ascending and ascending too. So you could even make the argument that they're really more comparable in that way too. So I would put the Blues ahead of Montreal, and then New Jersey is really fascinating to me. I think that one's a really interesting discussion because Hughes and Heischer is just like an unbelievable duo. But then outside of that, it's, Timo Meyer just decided to forget how to play hockey ever since he left San Jose. And then Andre Palat's been solid, but I think you'd take the rest of the Blues supplementary pieces outside of Hughes and Heischer. That in that way, you could also kind of make a case for them ahead of New Jersey, who have been like sort of one of the most young and promising teams in the Eastern Conference for several years now. Given and they're sort of more of a mixed balance team of a high end talent on the offense and on the defense with like Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes, Brett Pesce. Um, but I just think it's so fascinating to compare all these teams that have been like sort of the face of the young wave of the NHL, and you compare them to the Blues, and the Blues are right there with them, if not arguably better than teams like Montreal, like New Jersey, and then probably not better than a team like Toronto. I think just the top end talent in Toronto is like kind of hard to beat. But hey, if Tavares falls off a cliff, he's getting up there in age. Then if you can be better than like a Toronto, because they could be a team poised for regression. That's one that I'm interested in sort of comparing. So obviously you've got Matthews, Nylander, Tavares as the core three now. Matthew Nyes filling in on that top six, and then Domi and Michelli as the supplementary pieces. It's a really, really good top six. Are the Blues better than them? Probably not. But can they hang with them, and can they be a similar caliber? No one on the Blues is ever going to score 60 goals like Austin Matthews, at least not as I see it now. If Kyrou scores 60, I will so happily eat crow, but I don't think anyone is getting up to Austin Matthews' talent. Same thing with Nylander. Nylander is a really, really special winger. That's why like they're kind of the same like New Jersey, just with better supplementary pieces. But in terms of like Domi, Nyes, and Michelli versus Holloway, Snuggerud, and Kyrou, I think that's comparable supplementary pieces. I don't think that's why I say like I think they are a step down from a Toronto. But if you're approaching the level where Toronto is, who has been winning the Atlantic, who won the Atlantic last year, I don't think they won it the year previous, but I think they were close. I think Tampa won it if I remember correctly, or no, Florida won it. Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but who has been like the class of the Eastern Conference. I think they're approaching that talent, and this is in like year one of contention. There's still development to come for this Blues team. That's really exciting to me.
Super exciting. And I just want to make the point that the reason we don't have an Austin Matthews in the forward group is because Philip Broberg decided to be a defenseman and not a forward.
Oh, okay.
If he was a forward, trust, all right, he would tear it up.
Colin in the chat says we've got Mayu to score 60 for us too. So
There you go. Yeah.
hey, maybe it's all there.
Nice. The last team I want to talk about as a potential peer before we answer a couple big picture questions is the Winnipeg Jets? Question mark. I mean, like we saw
Yes.
a lot of direct comparison with this team in 2020.
I'm glad we saved this one for last.
Yeah, in the 2025 playoffs in the first round there. Obviously, the Blues had a historic choke moment. We don't have to get into that. Anyways, but with the subtraction of Ehlers, I think this becomes a little bit more interesting. That top line, you've got your Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Velarde up there, and then second line, Cole Perfetti. They've got Jonathan Taves currently on the daily faceoff lineup chart, and then Gustav Nyquist over on the right side. So I think we could see that lineup change a little bit personally, But those are some of the names. I mean, you've also got Niederreiter, Nemesnikov, Alex Iafallo. Like that's the next line down. I think you could maybe see some of those names work their way in. But anyways, how do you think the Blues compare with this team? Because um, they don't have, and this is something that we kind of really dived into before that first round series was comparing these two teams. We talked about the Blues don't really have a Kyle Connor when it comes to goal scoring. I mean, Jordan Kyrou is the closest thing, but Kyle Connor has scored 47, 41. He's scored more goals than Kyrou ever has several times. So in terms of pure goal scoring talent, I think Kyle Connor has them beat. But you look at the rest of the top six, I think it's interesting. I mean, Mark Scheifele, points wise, very very comparable to Robert Thomas. Um, and then who else is up there? I mean Velarde. You're excuse me. In terms of like point production, I think a Buchnevich or a Snuggerud at a Calder Trophy winning level outcome, like a 90 percentile outcome, can probably you know be better than a guy like Velarde. I mean, he scored 61 last year. That was his best season by far. I think Snug has it in him to be better than that. And then just looking at the second line, I think there's absolutely way more proven talent and ability on that second line. So for the Blues, that is. So yeah, how do you see this top six measuring up against what the Winnipeg Jets have? They just won the President's Trophy. Obviously, exited the playoffs pretty quickly after they beat the Blues. But yeah, what are your thoughts on how the Blues measure up with the Jets?
I thinking about this team, if you can't tell by like the smug grin that I've had on my face this entire time, regression is coming and it's going to be so sweet. They, as you said, were the President's Cup winning team with an MVP winning performance from Connor Hellebuck after like a back-to-back years of MVP caliber performances from Hellebuck. If he can do that at 3 years in a row, if he can perform at that level, then like congratulations to Connor Hellebuck. You have just become maybe the greatest goaltender of all time, because that just doesn't have that level of consistency, and at that level doesn't happen for goalies. Even like Lundqvist and Price, who are maybe the greatest of our age, had down years and never had like back to back to back years of like that heart levels. Um, so with some regression from Hellebuck and with the loss of Ehlers, this team has massive holes that they arguably have not filled. And I am very, very, I'm probably a little bit too excited about how hard I think regression is going to hit the Winnipeg Jets. But yeah, Scheifele and Connor do make up a terrific 1-2 punch at the top of their lineup. I guess, okay, the way I want to start this discussion is like we saw how the Blues compare to the Winnipeg Jets at their peak of their powers last season, and it was double overtime in game 7. They were equivalent. They were playing at the same level for a series, and there isn't really a discussion about that. That plus the progression of the Blues and the regression of the Jets, I think this Blues team is better than the Jets are right now. Jonathan Taves in 2025 as your
The
second line center.
year of our
Are
Lord.
you kidding me?
Yeah,
How old is he? Like 39 after not playing hockey for like 2 years?
I don't think he's that old. Hold on. He
Either way,
is he is 37, all right? Get it right.
37 after being out of the league. Like
Yeah.
you might as well be into your 40s at that point. I mean, they've got good players. Like, I'm not saying that they're just some trash team. I do respect the Jets. Like, they have built a regular season winner for sure. But if if your best piece if your best pieces on offense are Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. That's very good. Supporting them, you've got Cole Perfetti and Gabe Velarde. If I'm choosing between them and like Buchnevich and Kyrou, or Kyrou and Snuggerud, I'm taking the Blues 11 out of 10 times. If it's between Jonathan Taves and Brayden Schenn, give me Schenner 12 out of 10 times. And do I think Thomas and Kyrou can play up to Scheifele and Connor? I think it's close. I think maybe not the goal scoring ability, but hey, how long have we been talking about Kyrou's flirting with 40? And he's only gotten better every season of his career. He's only been able to improve and increase his level of performance. He's going to be 27. He's entering his prime versus Connor and Scheifele, who've been in it for several years now. This Blues team is on the up and up, and I don't think this Jets team is going anywhere anytime soon unless they make some massive shakeups. Plus the loss of Ehlers, that is a huge, huge loss for the Jets that they haven't been able to fill. So if you ask me between the Blues and the Jets, who is the better top six, I'm taking the Blues. And I'm definitely using my fan brain when I say this, but I don't think it's particularly close.
I think you make a good case. I like it. I think the Jets are probably in the same tier as the Blues, and maybe the reason I think so is the fall off that you see coming this year. I think that was something I was talking about uh, this time last year when we were doing our Central Division preview. I was like, this Jets team, ain't no way. They're taking a step back. Ain't no way. And they went out and win the President's Trophy. So I was proven wrong as far as regular season performance as to how good this Jets team could be. And so maybe I'm a little bit cautious because of that. But overall, I think they're in a similar range. I do agree. I see the Blues as having a better top six than the Blues, or excuse me, than the Jets. Um, but I think around the same tier, or if the Blues are at the middle to top of this tier, the Jets are probably towards the bottom. So yeah, I think you make a great case though, and I like it a lot. I don't have much to add. So why don't we pivot to answer this next question, which is sort of the title of your article was the St. Louis Blues have a top six that is ready to compete for a Stanley Cup. If anyone is joining live, our topic today is obviously the top six. This was inspired by an article that Alec recently wrote for Bleeding Blue over on Fansided. It's a Blues page. Go check out his article if you haven't. It's a great piece. And so, I mean, my question is, do the Blues have what they need in the top six to compete for a Stanley Cup? Alec, personally, I'm not really convinced. Another question is, do they still need to add something else? Do they need that game breaker? Do they need a star player or just another piece? Like maybe they need that Kyle Connor level player, or someone like that. That is something that Blues fans have been calling for a long time. And I mean, I think us included, that's something that we have wanted to see. And we've talked about it at times here. So really, I mean, I could maybe be brought over to your side. As of right now, I'm not totally convinced. And so, I mean, really what I want to do now is just hear your case for this top six being ready to compete for a Stanley Cup for the Blues. And how soon do you see it feasibly happening?
Well, I think the way that we compare this top six to some of the best in the league, as we've done throughout this episode, is just sort of review what we've said so far. Are they on the level of Tampa, Florida, Edmonton? No, they're not there yet. They do need another piece to get there. So is this top six ready to win a Stanley Cup? Maybe. I think they can do it. Are the odds against them? Yes, for sure. It's definitely would be a Herculean task to do so, but that's what winning the Stanley Cup is. But are they ready to compete for a Stanley Cup? One of the teams we compared them to as the as a similar caliber of top six is the Carolina Hurricanes, a perennial conference finalist. Other teams we said that they were approaching were Toronto, who got eliminated in the second round to the eventual Stanley Cup winners. Were better than Ottawa, who pushed Toronto to Game 7, better than Montreal, who fell pretty flat to the Washington Capitals, um, better than a lot of the first round exit teams, and better than the current version of the team that beat them. Obviously, last year's Jets team is different than this year's Jets team. I'm saying regression is coming for this year's Jets team. Who is clearly better than them in the Western Conference? Edmonton has the pieces that you just have to tip your cap and say, yeah, okay. I think Vegas with the Marner edition, having Mark Stone, is definitely up there in the upper echelon of just like stupid level of talent. And then I think Dallas very clearly has what it takes to win a Stanley Cup in any given year. I think those three teams are the class of the Western Conference. Would you add any to that list?
Which three?
Dallas, Vegas, and Edmonton. At least in
Um,
terms of like their top six and their ability to win the Stanley Cup in any given year.
Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton. The only other one I would put in there is Colorado.
Colorado's a tricky one.
Yeah, I mean, look, they do have. I mean, obviously they've got Nathan McKinnon. He's potentially the best player on the planet. Um, at least he has a case. Marty Nietzsche is still there. Brock Nelson is still there, although, eh. Landeskog is coming back. I mean, this team is legit. They sort of have figured out their goalie situation a little bit. That's not the point of your question. I guess I lump them in.
Okay.
But I think they are maybe the last of those four. I'll say.
So if Colorado is the last of those four, I mean, I don't think, like you said, McKinnon is just on a different planet right now. On their
Mm.
top line, they've got Natchez and Lehkonen. Natchez is around a point per game kind of guy, at least at this point in his career. And that's exactly where Jordan Kyrou has been sitting for the last while. Gabriel Landeskog is a little bit over point per game, so you can say that's a point in Colorado's favor for sure. Um, Last year, Arturi Lehkonen had 45 points in 69 games. I think Dylan Holloway can outproduce that, and then you still have Jimmy Snuggerud to factor into this equation of what can the top line be. And then Brayden Schenn and Brock Nelson and Nichushkin and Buchnevich. I think it's really comparable. And if you look at the regular season statistics, the Blues beat the Avs, which is more of a team game than just the top six on top six. So not a total comparison there, but they were able to shut down their top six was able to shut down and outperform the Avs top six. So I think it's comparable at least. And if you're comparable with one of the top teams in the Western Conference who's recently won a Stanley Cup, and that's not even considering in the progression that is coming for Dylan Holloway, for Jordan Kyrou, and for RT18, these guys are going to get better. I don't think we've seen the heights of what this top six can reach, and we're already considering them as comparable with that second tier of can they compete in the playoffs, and arguably with Colorado too. I'm not going to make the case that they're better than Vegas, Edmonton, or Dallas. I think those teams have the depth and the high end talent, but there's only so many of those forwards in the league. Until the Blues can manage to land one of those guys, which isn't necessarily a given, because like I said, there's only so many of those forwards in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they absolutely can compete in the playoffs and play with all of these teams. They have the ability to play up to all of this competition with what they have now before we even talk about progression and what Snuggerud can add to this lineup. We haven't even mentioned Dalibor Dvorsky's name in this entire conversation, let alone what Justin Carbonneau could potentially be as the next year Snuggerud. and how he might be NHL ready coming soon. There's so many depth pieces here that are filling in to look almost like a team like a Dallas. That by the end of the season, can they compete for a Stanley Cup? I think absolutely they have the chance to be in that tier, or at least the chance to play up to that tier of true top end talent if Thomas can get to that 100 point threshold that we all think he can get to. If Kyrou can approach 40 goals and be like a Kyle Connor, all of that is within this team. They're just an unproven quantity. But can they compete for a Stanley Cup? I think absolutely yes. I think absolutely they have the chance to go out and prove that they are one of those teams that you should fear in the Western Conference better than a Colorado.
I think you make some good points and a good case, and I think they definitely are ready to be a perennial playoff team again, and be a team that is definitely in and has a chance, a real chance to make some noise and make a run. Um, but what I like most about this team and about the points you were making is it seems like relative to a team like a Colorado or an Edmonton, you know, the secret weapons for those kinds of teams are fairly obvious, right? For Edmonton, it's McDavid, it's Draisaitl. For Colorado, it's McKinnon and Makar. But for the Blues, it's a lot different. They've got some legit talent. They've got the Thomas, the Kyrou, the Holloway. Um, they have some weapons that can really have a big night. On any given night. But I think what the Blues' secret weapon is more than anything is, as you said, it's the depth, but it's also the versatility. They can do so much, and this is a point that you've made a lot of times. Um, it's a team that you trust to be able to win a lot of different types of games and play to a lot of different game scripts. And so that versatility and that depth I see as their real secret weapons. Um, and I think that's enough to get into the playoffs. I think that's enough to make some noise, enough to potentially make a run a couple of times. Um, I still want to see. I still want to see an addition, and maybe it's internal. Maybe Dvorsky comes in as the 2C and just takes off and is plays to his ceiling or his potential. Maybe it's Snuggerud. Maybe Snuggerud becomes what we hope he can be on the top line as a winger and is like the next great Blues forward or something like that. Maybe there is an option internally, or maybe you have to go out and add it. But what I like about what this team is, what I like about what this team has is even if they do need another piece, like they're ready to take off once they get that piece. Like I think as I said, they can make a run without it. They can get in without it for sure. And you never know. You never know. You get hot. I think this team has the talent. If they get hot, if they're gelling at the right time, they have the ability to play with anyone. But I think to really blow this window open of contention, I want to see them add something else personally. Um, and what I like about what they've got is that I think they're ready. Uh, one of the teams that I saw like in the conversation or the sweepstakes for Mitch Marner this offseason was the Chicago Blackhawks, right? It was like that was like it or not, that was a name that I was seeing. I thought it would have been stupid, but they had the cap space and they were like pretty desperate to take some steps. That's like a situation where you add that star player, and how much can Mitch Marner do for you when you are stuck in neutral and maybe sliding back down the hill a little bit? Like that's a situation where you add the star player and you probably weren't you probably wouldn't be ready for it. That's not what happened. Obviously, Marner went to Vegas, but had they added Marner, like that's a situation that I think that's like the opposite of the situation that the Blues are in, where they've got the surrounding cast, they've got the depth, they've got the versatility. If they add that last piece or a couple of pieces like that, I think they're completely ready with some more development from the young guys. You maximize the talent that you've got in a guy like Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou. So that's how I view it. But I really like the case that you've made and sort of the projections you see for this top six. I think there's some real talent here, some real ability here to be a force in the West for years to come, as you said. And gosh, right now I'm excited to watch some Blues hockey again, man.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts on some of those points or anything else before we wrap it up here?
Just, I think you, without knowing it, did answer my question. Can the Blues win a Stanley Cup in any given year? As you said, can they make a run? You never know. So
Yeah.
can they win a Stanley Cup?
I think they can. I think it's possible.
Gotcha.
I see it as a possibility. You know, if everything goes right, but it's one of those situations where you don't want to have to rely on that all the time, right? And
Of course.
you want to be able to maximize the window. So to answer your question, I can see it for sure. I can see it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So this was episode number 99. Next up, we got episode 100.
A great one.
We'll be in triple digits for a long time. Maybe one day, maybe one day, 10 years from now, we'll get to episode 1000. But who knows? But this will be a fun milestone for the next episode. We might not be able to do another one for a little bit. We might not be able to do 2 this week, but we will be back pretty soon with episode number 100. And then from there on out, we'll continue to provide off-season content as consistently as we can, and roll right into October preseason stuff. It's getting there. We're almost to mid-August. Like we're sitting here August 11th. We're sort of in that mushy middle ish, but we're getting there to mid-August, and at that point it'll only be about a month and a half or something like that. So really looking forward to this season. Really looking forward to seeing what the Blues and what this top 6 can do. So if you want to join us again and look ahead and join the discussion with regards to 2025-26 and what this Blues team can be, we'd love to have you. We go live most often. We go live twice a week. So if you want to join live, we'd appreciate it. If you want to watch or listen after the fact, we appreciate that as well. But subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have passed that 500 subscriber threshold, that milestone that we've set for ourselves. And so thank you to everyone for subscribing. If you haven't already, please hit that button. That helps us out a ton. Like this video, follow, rate, review wherever you listen. We're on Spotify and Apple. Those ratings and reviews really do help get the pod in front of new eyes. And then follow us on socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod. Post a lot of other great content, announce when we're going live so you never miss a live stream, all that good stuff, announce upcoming special guests, which, spoiler alert, we might have one. We will have one pretty soon, so stay tuned for that. But thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks for an active chat. We had a lot of fun with you all today. We will see you next time, and as always, let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.